everyone, and welcome to our brand new show, The Education Hour. So in our very first episode, we are going to look at something called the Orion Mystery. Let's begin by looking at constellations and their importance in the ancient world. Question number 1, what is a constellation? A constellation is a group of stars that together form a recognizable pattern such as an animal or a mythological figure. In ancient times, constellations were used to create and track the calendar so that people knew when to plant crops and when to harvest them. They were also used for navigation to help sailors cross seas. For example, once you find Ursa Minor or the Little Bear in the night sky, you can easily spot the North Star that sits more or less directly above the Earth's North Pole along our planet's rotational axis. And once they had that, sailors could figure out their latitude. The visibility of a constellation depends on your location on our planet and the time of the year. Now, possibly the most visible constellation, and therefore the best known constellation, is Orion, named after a hunter in Greek mythology who was thought to be the son of the Greek god Poseidon. And movie buffs, he was not Percy Jackson's half-brother. But although Orion got its name from Greek mythology, it appears in many civilizations and cultures, including ancient Egypt. In ancient Egyptian religion, the stars of Orion were associated with the god Osiris, the god of fertility and therefore agriculture, as well as the god of the afterlife. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The Egyptians believed that their ruler, who we know was called Pharaoh, acted as a mediator between the gods and the world of men. And after death, the Pharaoh would become divine. As a god of the afterlife, Osiris thus became the embodiment of the dead and resurrected Pharaoh. The Pharaoh at death became Osiris, god of the underworld, and the dead Pharaoh's son, the living king, was identified with the god Horus, son of Osiris, and his successor. It was believed that the Pharaoh would travel to Orion after his death and take on, amongst others, the form of Osiris in the afterlife. Now let's pause there a moment and move on to the last surviving wonder of the ancient world, the Pyramids of Giza. Pyramids were built for religious purposes. The Egyptians were one of the first civilizations to believe in an afterlife. They believed that a second self called the Ka lived within every human being. When the physical body expired, the Ka enjoyed eternal life. The Egyptians therefore built the pyramids as tombs for their pharaohs. They believed that when the pharaoh died, his Ka, or spirit, needed an earthly home. Preserving the pharaoh's body in the pyramid ensured survival of his Ka, which would allow him a happy existence in the afterlife and give his people protection from disaster. In addition to the pharaoh's body, the pyramids contained food, furniture, and other items the pharaoh would need in the afterlife. All Egyptian pyramids were built on the west bank of the Nile, which, as a site of the setting sun, was associated with the realm of the dead in Egyptian mythology. The shape of a pyramid is also thought to be representative of the descending rays of the sun. And most pyramids were faced with polished, highly reflective white limestone in order to give them a luminous appearance like the setting rays of the sun. The best known pyramid is, of course, the Great Pyramid of Giza, built for Pharaoh Khufu. It is the largest of the 3 pyramids that can be seen today at Giza. The length of each side of its base is approximately 230 meters, and its height is approximately 147 meters. Khufu's pyramid is perhaps the largest single building ever erected on the planet. Its sides are accurately oriented to the 4 cardinal points of the compass: north, south, east, and west. Approximately 2.3 million blocks of stone were cut, transported, and assembled to create this 5.75 million ton structure, which is an absolute masterpiece of technical skill and engineering ability. The entrance to the Great Pyramid is on the north side, about 18 meters above ground level. A sloping corridor descends from it down below the ground, ending in an unfinished underground chamber. From this corridor, there is an ascending passageway that leads to a room known as the Queen's Chamber and to a great slanting gallery that is 46 meters long. At the upper end of this gallery is the King's Chamber. From this chamber, 2 narrow shafts run through the masonry to the exterior of the pyramid. For many years, the reason for these shafts remained unknown. Archaeologists suggested that the shafts were used to ventilate the monument during construction. Then finally, in 1989, Robert Bauval put forward what is now known as the Orion correlation theory. Robert Bauval was a Belgian engineer who was born in Egypt and spent most of his engineering career living and working in the Middle East and Africa. Bauval's investigations commenced in 1982 when he came upon an aerial photograph of the 3 pyramids at Giza, and he noticed that the smallest of the pyramids built for Pharaoh Menkora was not in line with the 2 larger pyramids. The following year, Bauval noticed that Mintaka, the dimmest and most westerly of the stars making up Orion's belt, was slightly offset from the others. Bauval then made the connection between the layout of the 3 main stars in Orion's belt and the layout of the 3 main pyramids in the Giza pyramid complex. Working with a colleague, Adrian Gilbert, Bauval developed the Orion correlation theory, which is based on the idea that the relative positions of the 3 main pyramids on the Giza plateau was by design correlated with the relative positions of the 3 stars in the constellation of Orion, which make up Orion's belt, as these stars appeared in the sky at the time of the construction of the pyramids. 3 kings, 3 pyramids, 3 stars. Not only did the layout of the pyramids match the stars with uncanny precision, but the intensity of the stars, shown by their apparent size, corresponded with the 3 pyramids at Giza. Furthermore, when Bauval considered the position of other pyramids in the area, he found that the pyramid of Nebka at Abu Ravash corresponded with the star at Orion's left foot, while the pyramid at Zawiat al-Aryan represented the star in Orion's right shoulder. The pyramids of Dashur were the 2 leftmost stars in the constellation Hyades, associated with the god Seth, brother of Osiris. The Nile River was, in Bauval's opinion, a representation of the Milky Way. In short, Bauval's theory was that the entire necropolis of Memphis, which included the pyramids of Giza, Dashur, Abu Ravash, and Zawiat al-Aryan, as well as the Nile River, were an accurate reflection or map of the constellation and the night sky. But let us get back to the so-called ventilation shafts in the Great Pyramid. Working backwards to see where exactly the constellations would have appeared in the sky back around 2400 BC, which is roughly when the pyramids were built, we find that the southern shaft from the King's Chamber, which is constructed at about a 45-degree angle from the ground points exactly to Orion, while the northern shaft from the king's chamber, which is constructed at about a 32-degree angle from the ground, points exactly towards Thuban or Alpha Draconis, which in 2400 BC was considered the pole star, as it was at the time the closest star to the North Pole. The pole stars were known as imperishable stars or the indestructibles. The Egyptians tied these stars with their beliefs about the afterlife, thinking that their dead pharaohs would join them there. I, the king, will cross to that side on which are the imperishable stars, that I may be among them. This is the wording in some of the ancient texts. Likewise, we know that Orion was important in ancient Egyptian culture because Orion represented Osiris, the god of the afterlife, whose form the pharaoh would take on in the afterlife. These shafts were therefore passageways that allowed the spirit of the dead pharaoh to connect to the stars and achieve divinity. Was life, religion, and culture for ancient Egyptians thus based on what they observed in the sky above them? That's all for this week. Thank you for joining us. Next week, we look at a special number in mathematics known as the divine proportion, and we'll see how the ancient Egyptians used this number in the construction of their pyramids.